coming and greeting our authors that have blessed this library more so than you might be aware. All of these ladies are local. They have also contributed 20 books or more for the library to read as a book club. And then we have passed them on to the district, and they are now a book club kit for the entire Pennsylvania library. And people may not realize it, but our library here has one of the most active and biggest book clubs because people are not asked or forced to buy their book every month. We take every effort in the world to try to get them a copy to read, and then we continue to distribute them. And every time that I put one into the Pottsville system, I write a note in there and I put all the information about what a great book it was and that they're a local author and blah, blah, blah. So somebody has to start somewhere. If we don't encourage new authors one way or another, please don't be offended, James Patterson. Our libraries would be filled with James Patterson, and I will be like, there's so many authors out there, and they need to be given a fair shot. I tell everybody, you don't have to like every book, but you must read every book, or I don't care what you have to say. That's a book club thing. If you didn't read it, you can't comment. If you read it and you hated it, I respect you for that. That's fine. But I would have to say that every single one of these ladies wrote fabulous books. We've had them come back. They're more than welcome to come back again. We have all of their books here in the library. You can purchase books for Christmas presents from them later. They're going to give us some knowledge, but you can always come to the library and get your books for free and read to your heart's content. So all of these ladies are on the shelves with little tags in there that they donated and that we would like to support them back. So with that being said, thank you very much again for coming. It's a busy holiday time, but they have made themselves available multiple times for the library. So thank you. So they actually are romance novelists, and they are all very, very unique and different. I have read all of their books, so I'm going to let you know. I'll just pick up what's here. Melissa has a fabulous collection of suspense love novels, okay? So one person's being stopped, but, finds that love interest. It was awesome, okay? Now, this is her second novel. Her first novel is Knightess. She is historical romance. So she's taking you back in time. Present day, way back to the Knights. Okay? Fabulous story. Okay? Okay. Soap opera in a box. Absolutely hysterical. When I started reading this, I read to Suzanne. I said, Suzanne, when I pass this out to the book club people, I'm going to let them know that this is a soap opera book. I was like absolutely hysterical. I enjoyed it immensely. Totally different than any of them. Laughing out loud, maybe because I was a bartender in New York. So let me tell you something. Some of the stuff that happened in here, I think she was looking in our windows. Let me tell you. So very funny. Okay, but very different. So we appreciate all of you guys for your creativities and your difference. Okay, so we have some questions and authors. For the authors, okay? So we are an author roundtable. So we're here to get some knowledge, some information, and then later there'll be some questions time for you guys to ask questions also. So, am I to direct it to one person, or do you want to
just ask the group?
Okay.
And we'll start chatting.
Okay. So this is one thing that I actually just spoke to Jess earlier today. I said, do you remember how or why you wanted to become an author? There had to be some point in your life where you decided, I want to tell stories. I want to write stories.
I think you should go first since it was your question.
Well, I would say I love mystery romance, and I just love the feeling that I get when I read one of those books. And so I just wanted to do that. I wanted to entertain somebody like I was entertained. So that's kind of why I started.
I'll jump in next. Okay. I was 12. Maybe younger than 12. I was in middle school, 7th grade. I had this amazing reading teacher. Her name was Mrs. Carline. I don't know if she's still out there, but you see this. She just made reading so much fun, and I remember my parents told her that I wanted to be an author, and it was a couple years after that I really got into writing, and the rest is kind of history. I didn't get to do it full time. Well, still not full time, but really get into it until years later, but still doing it.
Susan?
I think for me, it's more about storytelling. Even when I was a little girl, I could lie with the best of them, and I used to tell these outrageous stories that just would floor everybody at the dinner table, and they would just look at me and say, "Why don't you write this down? Write this down. Write this down." And I was young, maybe 9, but I would lie and tell these stories of people landing from Mars in their backyard, and blah 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 blah. So I think at a very young age, my imagination was just kicked in. And putting it down on paper and having, well, your family of course thinks you're wonderful, but everybody would read them and give me the support that I needed, and I did have a few things published when I was young, just poems and stuff, because my mother was kind of a mother, like, this is just marvelous, we have to have this published. So for me, it was storytelling. And I just wrote it down and I just loved it, and from then on I was baking away.
Nice. Okay, so this is something that I even to this day think about. So, what was the first book that made you cry?
Okay. I was a big Walter Farley fan with Blackstone.
Yes,
and I had the
absolutely.
whole series, and I think I started them very young, as a very young preteen, and they would always make me cry. Abandonment issues, that's my big thing. And yeah, they were lovely books. They were well written, they were full of adventure, and yet there was just enough sadness in there to tug at your heartstrings. So, an animal lover, that's what I am.
I'm kind of a harder sell. I don't cry at books very often, but Winter's Garden by Christine Hanna is the one that I cried. My husband came home, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, he'd landed from the airport, and I was sitting on the couch sobbing. He's like, "Who died?" I'm like, "Nobody, I'm finishing my book." Go away. Anyway, so that was the first one for me.
I don't remember crying for a book. I think I might have cried in one of our more recent book club books, Me Before You. What was that, Jojo Moyes, I think.
Yes.
I think I cried in that one. That one was pretty rough. But I don't know, I'm also not a big book crier.
I think it shows that
The
there's
animal stuff hits me pretty hard sometimes.
I think it shows you that there's emotion involved in reading, whether
absolutely.
it's crying or joy. And this is a true story. The other day, I had somebody that returned a book, and she said, "I had to cuddle with it for a little bit. I was so sad that it was over." And I look, and this is not an older lady or a young person. This is middle of the range, and she said, "I literally was like, oh my gosh." And I know that I've read books, and you're sad that it's done. Okay, that you're sad that they're done. Okay, what is the one thing that you experienced that made you feel like a writer? Not that you are, because you already are a writer. What's the one thing that made you feel like a writer? Like, wow, I've made it, I'm a writer. Coming to the Orwigsburg area Free Library Book Club.
That would be high on the list.
Actually, really high on the list. Yeah, I think, well, I'll jump in on this one. For me, it was just when strangers read my book and they were like, "Oh, this is a great book." Like, I was like, "Wait, really? Like, you actually liked it?" So that was huge for me. And having access to strangers due to book club was very helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say like the first reviews or the first people who actually talk to you about your book and you're like, "You read the whole thing?" Like, you know, you're kind of cringing at the same time, like, what did they think? But yeah, that's the first thing, that they're actually holding your book and they're like, "This was great." So
I think I shared this with you guys before, but I'm so modest about this. But when I was down in Cape May, everybody's sitting on the beach reading books, and I had my books, and I would go up to these perfect strangers and say, "I have just written the best beach read, and I think you should read this book." And this one woman just jumped up. She first looked at, she jumped up and she said, "Oh my God, you're an author!" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she said, Would you sign my book? Would you do it?" And I'm like, "Well, sure. What you think I signed?" And then she got around to everybody there and said, "Oh my God, there's an author. Did you know that?" And I just was like, I felt like that big, but inside I felt this big. I was like this big, like crawling off the beach, like, "Oh, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the read." Well, I was like, yes, I'll see you later. So that was my first thing. That's funny. It is funny.
That's great.
People
But you
reacted.
know what? And that's exactly what I spoke about earlier. You have to get your book read. And that's why I've encouraged these ladies. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith.
Yep.
You have to have faith in yourself. You have to have faith that you've written something that's gonna be enjoyed or emotion, cause emotion. You know, sometimes books are sad, you know, they are sad. It doesn't mean that they're not a good read. So all of these ladies had faith enough in themselves to offer up their child for us to read and share with them. And all the time, we are so grateful for that. So, okay, so what would literary success look like to you as a writer? So think about this, when you guys thought that you were gonna be fabulously famous and rich, but they're still here, or what do you consider to be a literary success? And I think those are two very different questions. What do you think it's gonna be, and what is it for you? So, Melissa, why don't you start with that, because I wanna comment on something Melissa wrote on one of her blogs one time.
Well, I would think literally success for me would be actually being able to quit my day job. I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to do that, but that's the hope. Is I don't need to be rich and famous, but I would just like to write full time.
Nice.
I do. Rich and famous. That's where it's at for me. But I think just the sheer pleasure of having someone read your book and come to you purposely to tell you that they have read it and that they enjoyed it.
That's huge.
That to me, I think, is you've arrived.
Okay, so the second part of that with the literary success, that's the only thing that I ever promised the ladies, is I will get people to read your book. I can't offer you fame and riches, but I can tell you that I will get people to read.
And that's everything.
And to come into a room and have 30 plus people there, knowing that they all read your book, and they come in kind of like, I hope that you have all enjoyed your experience here for book club.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the ladies were just delighted that, you know, that you shared your time, your efforts, and your stories with them willingly. And I hope that, you know, that you guys were grateful for that too. So in my eyes, literary success is somebody read your book. So, okay. So we have here, okay, so then we have some. All right, so if you had something to do differently as a child or a teenager to become a better writer as an adult, what would you have done? So if you could think back to when you were just starting out or thinking about being a writer, what's something that maybe you would have navigated better for yourselves to help assure that that success was gonna happen? And that's kind of looking at a crystal ball. So that's, you know, hindsight's 20/20. You know, everybody can look back.
Your stuff here.
I wrote a lot as a kid. And I mean, the only thing I think I could have done differently was let more people read stuff and take better advantage of some of the writers groups and whatnot that were available to me. Like especially in college, like we had a writers club, and I didn't join until maybe halfway through college, and I wish I had been more active in that early on, because it was a really good way to network and just see where you were at as a writer, see what your strengths were, see what your weaknesses were compared to other people, and that kind of thing. I wish we would have had something like that in lower grades as well.
Interesting.
I would agree with that. I went to school, college for interior design, so I didn't really think that I would have a career in writing at all. So I wish I would have taken more classes and let people read my stuff. I mean, I had a high school teacher who was very gracious and very complimentary, and he encouraged me. But other than that, I really didn't share my work with anybody. I just kind of kept it to myself. So I wish I would have shared.
Yeah, I think I would be more serious about what I was doing. As a teenager, writing was the last thing I was thinking of. So from teenager on through my adult life, I very rarely wrote anything of real meaning. And it wasn't until, well, those books came out in 15. So, you know, I lay dormant that whole time. So I think if I was more serious and I took English lit and everything in college, but it just was academic. I didn't really hit my creativity until, I didn't reach my stride until later on in life. So I wish I was more serious and applied myself more.
And not that anybody used this word, but I just think that there was fear that you weren't gonna be good at
Good
it. So
enough.
if they're encouraging you that if you're a writer, write and read and get people to read it and offer feedback. And we had another author here, and her biggest contribution to book club was at the end, she said that I respect all of your criticism, because criticism does not always have to be all good. And you were respectful on how you gave me the bad criticism, so that's gonna help me to be a better writer. And it is scary, when you create something, you put your heart and soul in it, and that's the thing, so write, okay?
Yep.
And, so that's excellent, okay? So we have some other questions here that, how do you start a book or a novel? For some people that might be interested about thinking about, can I do this? Should I do this? Okay, and what is the first thing that you would do? Which we all know, get a piece of paper and pen and start writing, but, so how do you start a book or a novel? Do you have a title? Do you have a title working? Do you have let me expand on that a little bit. So do you have a title, and then you work from there? Do you have an idea? Do you have a time frame? You know, these are all so different, so yes, Jess.
I have an idea, and then I have written a novel, like, each of the different typical ways. I've just sat down and wrote, which I will tell you results in a lot more editing down the line, so just be forewarned. I have done the outlining, and I have also done like flashcards and then moved the flashcards around in order to put the novel in the way I wanted, which is actually how I wrote Lady of the Tournament, because that has a dual plot line going, 2 different time frames, so that was how I had to write that one. So I've had a little bit of fun with everything, but sometimes I'm writing it by hand, sometimes I'm just at my computer and my fingers are flying, and then I have to weave everything together. So I definitely do a lot more editing than I probably would have to if I were more organized, but sometimes that's how my best writing comes out. So.
And I would say I start with the title. That's my
See,
first
I
one.
knew someone was gonna say it. I knew it.
That was my
girl.
last thing. I still don't have a title for the last one.
That's what I do. The titles come to me first, and then I write down the title, and then I'll just open up a document or a piece of paper and write for half an hour about as much as I can think that would possibly go with that title. And then I just go from there. And so then after that, I usually know how it starts and how it ends, but the middle is like this huge mess. And I am not a plotter, I am a pantser. I do it by the seat of my pants. I've tried to lay it out like in an outline, and I've ripped up the outline. I did a board that had pictures of each character, and my daughter's like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, yuck. And I pulled it out. I was just like, I couldn't, because I couldn't picture the character in the picture wasn't really the character in my mind. So I've done a little bit of everything too, but I do it fly by the seat of my pants. So.
Everything she said applied to me, absolutely everything. I start with the title, and then I always tell people, writing anything begins with one sentence. Just put a sentence down, just start with the sentence and grow the sentence from there. I mean, I always use that little cartoon character, Snoopy, sitting on his doghouse, and he's at his thing, and it was a dark and stormy night. Well, you know, everybody laughs at that, but you can put any ending on that to make a fabulous novel. It was a dark and stormy night, and her car was stalled in the rain on the side of the road. It was a dark and stormy night, and she reached for the bottle of vodka waiting for him to come home. It was a dark and stormy night. You know, you can just make up all kinds of stuff. You can make it fun, you can make it tragic, you can bring romance into it, you can bring all kinds of stuff off of just that one sentence. So start writing just one sentence. Get a title. I get a title, I write from the seat of my pants, and write something that you know about. Write something that you know about, that's familiar to you, so you can grow that idea. I mean, I can't grow a petunia to save my soul, but I'm pretty good with roses, because I know a little bit. So find out what your interest is and write from there. You know, I was a bartender, and I know fine dining industry inside and out, so that was my lead-in to this book. And the deal breaker just automatically sounded to me like, oh, there's going to be all kinds of mucky muck in there that's going to break all kinds of deals, and then you just go from that. I don't do vision boards or anything.
To add into that, it's just interesting, like how the three of us have I mean, maybe in this category, you guys have a different writing style than I do, but the very first chapter I wrote of Lady of the Tournament is now in the middle of the book. The very first chapter in your book
Yep.
was once in the middle of your book.
In the middle of my book.
So, like, we totally reverse ordered
Yeah.
how we wrote things
Yeah,
and how
absolutely.
we ended up in the
Because you
final product.
have to have a strong opening. You
Mhm.
have to have, the minute you open a book, you have to have that first paragraph or that first line grab you in order to keep your interest going. So, you know, my editor always says the worst things you can start with is the weather. You know, people say,
Not as
it was a dark and stormy night. You know, you start with the weather, you know, it was a wonderful, beautiful day in Cape May, you know, it was something, something, something. You know, hit your reader right off the bat with something, whether it's the bloody knife or whatever it is, hit them right off running to make them say, oh my gosh, what's this about? That's your grabber.
Yeah.
And my book was all about the weather when I wrote this, and my editor says you gotta start with the fire, and I'm like, oh my god, how am I gonna do that? That's like the whole structure, the whole bones of my book. You know, you gotta start with the fire. So yeah, it's
And you wanna find out
interesting
why
how
there
it
was a
ended up.
fire.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so, excellent. Does anybody else wanna add anything? I don't wanna ever. Good, okay, cause authors are also talkers. That's okay, so. Alright, so, alright, okay. Probably, again, different answers, okay? So do you put any of your own characteristics into your main character? So is there any personification of yourself in your main characters?
Just one word, yes.
I would say yes to that too, and I would say also some of the other characters, like I may not use all my characteristics in the main character, but I would put them into other ones, pull out certain things and use them and highlight those in other characters. So,
I'd say yes to a degree. I wish I was as brave as my main character. I'm not quite there, but I think I make my main characters almost how I wish I could be and live vicariously through them.
But they're very physical,
They are.
and you're brave in other ways.
That's true.
Okay, so what's the hardest thing about writing a book? Besides sitting down and starting, because we already kind of basically said that.
Editing.
editing
Editing.
Editing, I'm sorry, what was it?
in the middle. I
The
can
middle,
stick in the middle.
okay. And both of
cutting
your
things
fellow
out.
writers have said that they put the meat in the middle and then we're told they had to move it around, so I can imagine.
And then when you have the meat in the middle and you love your story, then your editor comes around or whoever you have put your trust in and says, oh no, this has gotta go, this gotta go, that's gotta go, this has gotta go, that's gotta go, chop, 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 chop. And you're like, it's agonizing because you're like, I can't get rid of that, that's like, yes you can, and when, believe it or not, when you
Thousands
do,
of words do you think you've deleted?
oh my god, chapters.
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. My
Tens
book was
of
this
thousands
fat
of
when I finished. It was like that fat. Honestly, to get down to this. And actually, more of this could possibly go. I mean, you just chop, chop, chop. But it makes a better read.
It does. It's
It does.
necessary.
Yep.
Rough but necessary.
Editing
Definitely
is the
the
tough. The
hardest
middle.
part for
The
me.
middle is the toughest.
Yeah.
The middle's the tough.
But sometimes I think you need to actually write the stuff that gets cut, just so you know, so you can process it and.
It makes great
Oh, yeah.
backstory
Yeah.
too and bonus content.
So she told you, don't throw it away, just don't put
Don't
it in
throw
the
it
book,
away.
okay?
Save it in a different file. Clearly labeled.
Okay, so a question here, why do you write what you write in regards to your genre? So why are you romance writers? Why did you pick historical fiction? Or
love this
suspense
question.
novels? Or mayhem? I'm trying to get them all in there.
For me, I write medieval era historical stuff just because I was always fascinated by the era, and it's one of those eras where we know just enough to give us a guideline of how historically accurate to be, but not so strict. Like if you were writing a World War II novel, there's so much research available. Like, you really have to watch your details. There's a lot of black holes where we just don't know. Like, even the historians don't know some of the things that were happening in that era. So it gives me as a writer a little bit of creative license. And I don't know why I keep writing romance lines, but they just ended up in there. So.
Well, and for me, I like mystery romance, and I guess Mary Higgins Clark was like the first person or author that I read in high school, and I just fell in love with that kind of thing. But yet, I like a little bit of romance in there too, so I'm not real heavy on romance. I kind of, walk the line of both mystery and romance, so.
I don't really consider myself a romance writer.
Got some steamy and stuff in there.
You're totally a romance
enjoyable,
writer. A soap opera romance writer.
But I think I like mystery and suspense a little better. And so even though this turned out to be a romantic novel, which is more of a romp, really, than a hard, fast romance.
Oh,
It
there's a
doesn't
romp.
follow. It is a romp. It's fun. And, but I'd like to touch on other subjects. As I did, I wrote a book of a dog story for lots of forgiveness and loving and all that, which I'll talk about another time. But I'm interested in writing other novels and other genres than just romance.
No, that's interesting because obviously you don't have to keep yourself in one category.
Right.
There's so many authors, even now on this day and age, they've started out as silhouette Harlequin romance novels, because I can bring you one from Nora Roberts from 1973, but now she's writing as J.D. Robb, and is doing futuristic cop stuff and writing other novels. So even though you've started on one aspect, the developmental stage of your writing can continue to blossom and grow with you, or different ideas, or different interests, or wherever you might be in your life at that time. This just happens to be what they're writing right now. But I appreciate that Susan said, I have other books, I've written other things, so people evolve. Mary Higgins Clark, same thing. She writes. She has a couple love stories in there, that are true love stories.
My next one coming out is a contemporary.
There
It's
you
not
go.
even a historical.
See, there you go. So
it's
branching out.
totally we can write different stuff, and I think all of us too. Like our books are we're kind of cross-genre authors.
We are.
To a certain degree. I really struggled putting my book in a box and defining what it was when I first published it, and I had to let people read it, and I was like, okay, you tell me what this is. Which I wouldn't recommend doing it that way, but that's just, in order for the story to be what it is, that's what I had to do.
Yeah,
And I mean,
exactly.
I know you get it with yours as
Yeah,
well.
I second that 100%.
And that's where you probably are less of a pantser than us, because you at least had a genre, I think, when you started, because you knew what you liked.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Okay, so do you hide any secrets in your books that only a few people would know about or find?
I do.
I swear, one of my co-workers is in this book.
But I do. I have something in all my books about each one of my kids and my husband and my mom, but only they would know it. So
That's sweet.
everybody reads it except for my one son. He does not like books at all. He'll read the first page and he'll read the last page. He's like, I didn't see anything about me. I'm like, well, you're in there. But only they would know it. So I do hide secrets.
It's cute. It could be something on the wall or something. It could be so narrow that only they would get it. That's cute.
I don't think I've hidden anything in my book, but I leave a lot of open-ended threads, and that's what really prompted me to write the sequel, because when I ended this book, I ended it with a wide open future. So I thought, I can't just end it right here. She's got to go and do something else. There has to be something more. So when I started to write this, it was pretty kismet, because all those loose ends just got automatically answered in the sequel. And it was like, oh my God, I just completed that, I just completed this. So it really wrote itself. But as hiding them, no, I don't have anything here.
I didn't really hide anything like family related or whatnot, but I mean, there's definitely some things in there that are extremely subtle that I think will be revealed in time. And you'll be like, oh, I remember that. And we'll see if people catch it or not.
Some history. Love it.
Layers.
The other book, there was lots of things that people could identify with.
Now let's talk about that.
Okay, so what were the hardest scenes for you to write?
I would say mine are the villain, the bad guy, to write, like when they're doing something, you know, like to someone that's manipulative or harmful. Yeah, that's, to me, that's the hardest, to put myself in that place and try to think
really
like
liked
a.
writing that part of
Did you?
mine.
Okay.
I loved being in
Melissa has a pretty graphic, not like overly the top, but I know what the one scenario with
Yeah.
and you can hide, you probably are referring to.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was, you know, it was a domestic issue, and I'm sure that was very hard to write.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part in my book where the two main characters are sharing their past, and each one in their past has a secret, dark, very dark past, and they shared that. That was a little tricky for me to write because not that it pertained to me, but just the subject matter was disturbing.
Probably hit a note with a lot of people that would be reading.
Yeah.
Very common.
Yeah,
You know, nothing
it
to be
was
ashamed
common
of,
and
but-
horrifying and tragic and very plausible. But
And very
both of those
relevant.
incidents could very well have happened and left those people scarred pretty deeply. And it was that part of that book was hard for me to write because I had to write it very delicately. I didn't want to sensationalize it, and I didn't want to bring in my feelings in it. It just had to be very delicately handled. And not to pat myself on the back, but I think I did a good job of presenting that and having people not slam the book shut and say, oh my God, I can't read any of that. You know, so it fit right in. But that was hard for me.
I think just kind of similarly, that was one of the harder scenes for me. I have a moment where the character goes back and kind of, she's telling the other character about her past, and it was a really raw scene. And that was, I mean, it wasn't hard to write, it kind of came out, but it was emotional for me to write.
Yeah.
And all of those are necessary to move the book forward.
Yes.
So even though they're all saying about how they were maybe difficult to write, they were important to the story. They were important to the storyline, to where the characters were at. And if you hadn't gotten through that or delivered that information to your readers, they wouldn't have understood.
And I think
the
that's
next
where
process.
the reader feels the emotion in the story as well. Like, and that's probably why it's hard, because you gotta get it just right. Like, you want the reader in a certain place in that moment.
And it's a huge link to the whole chain. Without it,
Right.
I think the book wouldn't have had the substance that it would have had without that.
Okay, so we'll ask some questions about publishing. I know that the ladies have worked with editors, are self-publishing, which seems to be a trend. There's good, bad, and ugly for all of those involved, and at later times you can get into details with it more. But what was your favorite part about publishing a book?
Power.
See,
No, like
All right,
for me,
personally, so are you talking personally publishing a book?
yes,
Yeah,
I self-publish.
Yes.
I chose to go that route because at that point I was so emotionally invested in my book, I could not possibly change anything else on a big picture scale. And if I had tried to pitch it to an agent or a major publisher, there probably is more stuff they would cut or tweak or, you know, edit out. However, and I was at the point where I wasn't willing to do that, so I maintained that power and control over what I wanted to change, and I was grateful for it.
It was your baby.
yeah,
At that
it's
point,
truly-
yes, 100%. I mean, keep in mind too, like I've been kind of transparent about it, but my first book I started way back in high school, so it kind of grew with me as I matured into an adult. It's like there's very little in there left from high school, thank goodness. But it like I grew up with this book, so it was really an emotional thing for me to let people read it at all, much less.
Well, mine's a little different because You Can Hide is traditional published. That was my first one. And I went that way just because I wanted somebody other than my family to tell me that it was halfway decent. And because your family is always your best cheerleader, so there's like, you don't want them to pat you on the back and say it's okay. So I wanted somebody else's opinion. And I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't have any connections at all with anybody. I didn't know any authors, I didn't know any editors, I didn't know anything. So that's why I went that route. But I did do self-publishing for my other two.
How many rejections did you get till you finally got a publisher or an agent?
My first one took it. So
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Wow.
You've met them here at the Orwigsburg
Wow.
Library.
Wow.
And when they're millionaires, I tell them, please send me a postcard, just let us know where you're at, we can be happy for you.
What was the question?
Publishing, what was your favorite part about publishing a book?
Publishing. I queried my book, but it was, again, I'm that cross genre. So when you and there's a book like that big, I don't know if you've all got that book of all the agents and all the publishers in the entire world. And you just start paging through that and picking somebody. And they're either strictly romance, or they're strictly mystery, or they're strictly suspense, or they're strictly historical. And it's very hard to find an agent even to pick up their book. And they don't sugarcoat it. They say these agents and publishers have stacks on their desk that if they don't hit that first line, if they read 2 paragraphs, push, you're gone. You're not even in the slush pile, you're gone. So I had a lot of rejection. And I just got tired of that and said, well, I want the book to move, I want it to do something. So I went to Amazon, and it hasn't done much of anything in Amazon. That was probably not my best foot forward, but word of mouth and satisfied readers, and that's how you're going to get your book well known. On Amazon, to me, you're just, like I said, a little bit of sand on a huge beach. And there's some very good books on Amazon, and there's a lot of trash. And you just don't know who's who, and the one with the most money wins, the most marketing skills that person has wins. And so that's kind of the downside of publishing. But the good side is getting that book in the mail and opening it up and seeing it in print. I mean, that's
a fun
thrilling.
feeling.
That's a fun feeling.
Yeah, it is.
Did anybody else want to add anything on that? Okay, so what did you never think you would have to do as an author? Sell your soul.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you think? I think that, we're talking on the publishing side, so, I feel that you all felt that you were just gonna write a book and the world would open up and it would be this wonderful, wonderful experience for you. And I think that the ladies sitting here at the table are being honest to the folks here that are listening, that there's hard work behind getting your book out there to the world. So not only are you writing it, but you're self-promoting. You're coming in, you're hawking it, you're like, hey, you're coming to book clubs, you're providing books to the book club. We're just poor little library, being truthful. These ladies were kind enough to take a chance on us, just as we were happy to have a chance to read their new materials. And I know that Jess and Melissa and Susan have all picked up the phone and just, you try to get it out there.
Cold call.
Marketing
Cold calls.
is huge, and I'm not good at it. I just don't know where to go with that. And I'm an author of 3 books, and I'm still stuck. It's hard. It's a hard thing.
Get people. Marketing is hard. I mean, I didn't expect, I think the thing for me is I didn't expect to have to keep after marketing as constantly. Like, if you back off on running your ads or doing events or doing stuff to get in front of people, your sales, it's, I thought like you would, I'd put it in front of people and it would just stay at this plateau, and it's kind of like this. I mean, until we all make it to the big time. But, yeah, it's definitely a lot of legwork on that I wasn't expecting.
And I would agree with that. And one of the things is I never thought I'd actually have to talk to anybody. I'm actually very shy.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend say, well, now you're going to talk to the world. I'm like, no, that's why I wrote it. And she's like, oh no, now you're going to have to talk to people. And I'm like, oh, okay. So here I am.
And it's hard because it's the reviews that are going to push your book through. And very, very rare, I shouldn't say very rare, but people promises to leave reviews, and they don't. And it's not because they don't want to, it's just time consuming and it goes out of their heads. But reviews are that's the engine that keeps your books going.
It feeds that Amazon algorithm.
Huh?
It feeds the algorithm.
Yeah.
A lot of algorithms.
Everyone homework, next book club meeting, okay?
Yeah,
I'll write it out and put everybody's homework out there.
Yeah.
I just have a follow-up with Melissa, when you said you went to an publishing company and an agent that took you first time. What made you change that and go self-publishing afterwards when it was like a piece of cake going and getting it published with a
Well,
publishing
it's
company?
not a piece of cake. Writing putting your stuff out there and writing the query letters and that stuff, that's hard. That's just as hard, if not harder than
Oh,
writing a book,
believe
I
me,
think.
I know, let me brief. I didn't mean a piece of cake. I meant like I'm wowed by you got it in one. I thought, well, then you go back to the same one, and if they liked your first one, they would take your second one.
Well,
Just
they would
curious.
have, and she still would, like if I wanted to still work with her, and I still talk to her and, do things with her and stuff, but my thing was, there's things that I liked and that I'd like to change about my first book, or that I wanted more control over, and so with self-publishing, you have that, and you don't have that with, a publisher. They're only, because they put out a lot of money. I didn't put out a dime to do You Can Hide. They put out all the money. So at a certain point, there's things that until you start seeing that return on that investment, they're not going to do. So.
Thank you.
And sometimes going with a publisher, more than a big publisher, like Random House or something like that, you may be tickled that they bought your book, but that's no guarantee they're going to put that book on shelves.
Right.
It can sit for a long time in their slush pile. It can sit there for a long time before they put it together, and they will put it together. So your book may hit the shelves, but it may not even resemble your book after a while. So, I'm with Jess on this, that, you should keep some control on that, especially if you love your book. Now, if you're like James Patterson or someone like that, who has probably ghostwriters writing for him and he could care less what's out there, just bringing the money, that would be something else. But for first-time authors, I think it means the world to you to have your book published and have some control over what's happening. And
There's another factor too, is the timeline. If you sign, and I don't know, you worked with a small publisher, so maybe they were a pretty fast timeline, but when I was researching traditional publishing, it seemed like the theme was expected to be a couple years. And I have a friend who went with a big traditional publisher, and it took her probably a good solid 1 or 2 years from when she finished the book to when it actually reached people, and a lot of edits in that time and everything else, even after she had it done. But with self-publishing, we work on our own timeline. So like my book that'll be coming out in spring, I went from concept to publication in 1.5 years. If I were to do traditional publishing, I'd probably still be in the querying process right now. So I add like another year or two at least onto that. And I mean, this is not to bash traditional publishing in any way. I mean, however you get your book out there, get it out there. But if you, like this one that I have coming out is a little more current, so it's kind of time sensitive. So I really, because it's a different genre, I thought about going the traditional route, or at least trying to. But I think I'm probably going to self-publish it again, just because I know I can get it out there faster while it's still current.
Yeah.
So, factors.
We've had some authors that come here and they've told us it took them 8 years to get their book published and on a shelf. So then not to, there's hundreds of authors and I love these ladies, but I'm just giving experience for people that are asking. That's the reason that she went for self-publishing the next time. She said by the time, after 8 years, she's like, I'm done with it. Like, that's so old to me. I can't be encouraged and excited about something that I did 10 years ago. And now they're finally coming out and telling me that my book's ready. Because it probably got stuck in the slush thing or didn't get put together or whatever. So I see a lot of the people that I talk to about self-publishing is that time concept thing. And it's your baby. You're excited. You're promoting it. You're helping it get to grow, to become alive. So
royalties are higher too.
There you go.
Self-publishing.
Get that millionaire going.
And we all have money, like by self-publishing, we have a lot of money out of pocket, which we would not have if we had signed with traditional publishers. But that said, we're getting it back to us faster because our royalties are significantly higher.
So this is secondary part of that question. So what is the one thing that you would change about your initial book release? So you all have more than one book. Okay, Melissa went to traditional route the first time. Obviously, I told you she already changed avenues there. Jess, his same time frame was the leading example and why she chose not to, and we went with Amazon. So, hindsight's 20/20. So would they go? Would you do the same thing that you did the first time? Probably not. Yes? No?
I would change how I put mine out there. I did not realize that once you click that publish button on Amazon, that you basically start a timer. In the first 30 to 60 days, Amazon is going to do what they can in their power to actually push your book out to people, which they sort of kind of do to a certain degree. It's in this cool new release category, which means if you do any sales, they will try to use the algorithm to your advantage. After that 30 to 60 days, it's dead in the water. I pushed that publish button by accident probably 2 or 3 weeks before my advertised release date, which in hindsight was a huge error. And I also did not have pre-order set up for my first book at all. I didn't know how to do it, so I just I know things wrong in advertising and marketing. I did better on my second book, and I'm going to do better still on my third book, but just something as simple as that. Don't push that publish button until you are 110% ready to go and your marketing is already rolling, so that you can get even if you're only selling it to family, get those 30 sales on the first day and your book will actually be noticed by strangers. Otherwise you're buried.
I didn't find that. I didn't find that, and I published right then, but I never got pushed.
Well, I didn't have
Now I got a lot of reviews, and I sold a lot of books, but that was mostly through my, as a matter of fact, I even called them and said, hey, how can I get my book, to come up on certain Facebooks, how can I get this book to come up, like when you get to Amazon and they'll have all the books there. And he was quite blunt. He says, just money. Just money. And I didn't even know what that even meant, but apparently there are all kinds of little hand-holding techniques you have to do with Amazon to get your book pushed to the front. So, I don't know how to answer that, really.
You guys are answering.
Yeah.
It's a lesson learned.
It is a lesson learned. And it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And because Amazon, to say something positive about Amazon, they are constantly coming up with new programs and new ways to promote your book. So it's not like they're not going to promote your book. you just have to be savvy enough to get in there and know which program is good for you. Like they have a read, free, you give your book away free. I haven't quite got the concept of that yet because I haven't made a penny with that. But they have, you know, they have, don't they, Jess? So help me here. They have, what's that other thing they have?
They have countdown deals.
Yeah, count on deals and things like that. So
Those are hard to get.
any up and coming authors will probably find some new things on Amazon that hopefully they can promote better.
Well, the idea behind the free is that more people read it, and every time somebody purchases it on Amazon, your algorithm goes up. So even if they're purchasing it for free, it raises you in the category, and then and you know, if you look on Amazon, you can scroll through romance, and there's 100 pages of authors of romance.
Yeah,
And you got the one at the top, and then you got the one 100 pages later. Well, every time somebody buys it, even if it's free, it raises you up. So that's what happens. You want to get to the first, second, or third page, and that's where you can stay if you. And then other people who don't even know it's free will purchase it, or you know what I mean. It just raises your viewing, and that's how it helps you. So it does help to give it away free.
Oh,
Because
okay.
It builds your reputation
Yes,
too.
and it will stay
All
up.
of these people's books will be free on Amazon.
Actually, I'm never doing it again. Y'all had your chance.
Well, and it's just the Kindle version. That's free. It's
did
not the
that.
yeah.
I did exactly what she said. I ran a BookBub featured deal, and I gave away almost 20,000 copies of my book, which
Wow.
was amazing, but at the same time it was like, oh my gosh, my heart. But I mean, that did work to get me visibility. I've had at least as before sales were kind of dead in the water, now sales are at least stable. I did get to see my book on the #1 spot in all of Kindle free, and keep in mind there's two lists. There's the Kindle paid list and there's the Kindle free list. So if your book isn't free, it's only going to be on the Kindle free list. But both of my books then spent some time on those very hard to reach bestsellers lists, and I'm not really doing a lot in marketing them at the moment, which I probably should be doing more. But it did help me to at least get my name out there. Would I do it again? Probably not. But now it's been done once, and I'm glad I did it once. But
Well, and it got you out of the Amazon basement.
it got me out of the basement.
If you get out of the basement, then you're doing well. Because once you get down there, it's hard to get out. But once you're raised up, then you don't go as far down, even if your sales are flat. So
there's the business side,
There's the business
or the
side.
dark side of the, so, okay, so we kind of talked about how much you guys wrote, how much you had to throw away and edit. So this is kind of like a two-part question. So have you ever cried with a particularly emotional scene that you wrote? And did it cause you angst when you then had to get rid of the blood, sweat, and tears of what you put in, and then the editor said, oh, that's no good. What do you mean that's no good? Like, that's the best part. And they're like, oh, no, not really. So,
Yes.
has writing caused you to cry?
Definitely.
Definitely,
There's hard scenes. There's really hard scenes.
definitely.
Not frustration side.
No,
Sure,
not
it's called-
frustration
okay.
side, like emotional side. Like, I think in order to get in your character's head, you have to put yourself in a vulnerable
Yeah.
place.
Well, and I would say I'm not a crier, so mine's more of the frustration of writing. That's maybe closer to tears than the actual writing, the character scene or whatever. Just trying to get it out the way I want it to be out, the way I want it to be seen. That's to me was harder or more emotional.
Yeah, I second that. I think my little book, The Puck and Minnie, I bawled all the way through that. And I loved it. But that book went straight from my heart onto paper. That my editor was so touched and moved by that book that he said, I hate to tell you this, but it's perfect just the way it is. So I just took that and ran with it.
That's great.
And I'm still very emotionally attached to it. It's that's why I have so much trouble telling
Susan's love
people.
child book.
Yeah, they'll say, well, tell me about your book, and I really stammer all around because there are just no words to put with that particular particular book. But these books, no, I didn't cry over losing. My cry scenes were left in, so.
Okay, so we have some romance genre-specific questions, so just for this category that they have. So, what determines how risque your content gets, and do you aim for a certain level? Fire!
Do you want to go
You
first?
go first.
Let's see, Jess has her face covered.
Well, my heat level is kind of mild, I would say. When I started writing, I had a 12-year-old and I had a 98-year-old grandmother, and I wanted them both to be able to read my book, and I didn't want to be embarrassed about what either one thought. So that's where I kept my spice level to the mild side. Because my 12-year-old, now she's 15, but she has read all 3 of them. She literally stood over my shoulder while I typed Cherry Hollow. So she's like, what's happening next? And so there was never any question about what I would put in there because I just didn't want to be embarrassed by it, so.
I have some hot scenes in my book, but I wouldn't call them lewd and lascivious. You know, they were gently written with humor, and you have to be very careful about what you write, because especially in this day and age, because you'll offend somebody at some time. There's nobody you're not going to offend, no matter if you use the word hell or if you use something stronger, somebody's going to be offended by that. So it's you just have to put it out there and temper it down and not make it so torrid. The first cover
I
I
know there are
had,
people that like Tori, because I know which books they are, so.
Oh,
Thanks for that too.
the first copy, the first cover I had for the Deal Breaker, and I think you
I
have
like
it.
that cover better.
Amazon censored. Yeah, because, and the only reason I knew that was because I entered some kind of a little contest they had there, some kind of a thing. And they told me that the cover had too much nudity and it involved alcohol. And they apparently draw their lines on guns and alcohol and nudity and things like this. And yet when I look through Amazon covers and I'm like, wow, you know, here's somebody laying back with rocks and boys. And I'm like, wow, look at that. And here's, I'm just
But
like
there
a
was no
bartender
booze
standing
there.
there.
There was no booze there.
You know, it's like,
You have
everybody's
it all together.
so I went and I caved and I got a better cover. But you know, that's how touchy people are out there. So it's just a matter of putting it out there for me.
I know Jess has a different answer for this because we talked about it.
I really struggled with what I put in mine. And I think part of it, I don't know, when I was going through my initial edits and I was trying to make it a romance novel, some people were like, oh, you gotta make it hotter. So I went hotter, and then I was like, oh my gosh, my mom's gonna read this. And then I was like, and so I tamed it down, if you can believe that, because mine's definitely hotter than both of these 2 ladies. But it's still, I still wouldn't push it like there's way
The
worse
first
stuff
one.
out there. The
Yeah,
first
see,
one, the
The
second one I
one
toned
is
down.
not- Yes.
The third one is, I've got to make a decision.
Steaming it back up.
I've got it. It's just my 2 main characters, man. They're just so good together.
You see, now I read your book and I didn't even phase that.
Well, see, like, and it depends
See,
on
so
who
it
reads
depends
it.
on your reader.
I have gotten comments on reviews
I
that
mean,
were like,
I
this
loved
was
your book. That's
way,
exactly the way it was.
that said the sexual content was too graphic and unnecessary. Literally, that's what the one review said. And yet
Oh,
I've
I
had
didn't get that at all.
and yet I've had like my grandmother's read it. I don't have kids, so at least thank goodness they don't have to read it. But like my conservative aunt read it, and she said it was fine. My mom did read it several times before it was published, and she said it was fine. So blame her. But yeah, I mean, I still struggle with that.
I know that Jess struggled with that because she knew that her mom was going to be reading, her grandmother was going to be
And
reading.
the church
I
pastor.
was like, no, it is what it is.
I never had a thought of that. I wrote what I wrote, that's right. But it was beautiful. I don't even want to think about it, actually.
It was elegant.
Thank
It was very, yeah, it was tastefully done.
I was reading the first one, my husband in bed. I was like, oh my God, the ladies are gonna like this. Listen to this with from Jess. That's the only parts I read. It's my mind, I don't know. I was laughing. I'm not laughing like it was funny, just I was like, cause Jeff had concern about it.
Sorry, I have a tangential question. With the reviews, would you say that the review, like the sexual content was graphic and like unnecessary? Did that like help your sales? Because I feel like sometimes
I don't know, we'll see. It was a new one, so we'll see. And the best part was they still gave me 4 stars. So I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't know who it was, but I'm like, yeah.
True story. I've had people bring the book back to this and say, this is the dirtiest book I've ever read. I read every single page, so I know. Not yours, not mine. So I'm sure you did get good reviews because they still read the book. So that's what I'm saying. I just laugh.
Can I say, when we read Jess's book for the book club, and I somehow gave her a 1 star, and she messaged me and she's like, did you mean to just give me 1 star for, she's like, if you did, that's fine. And I'm like, oh my God, no, can I fix it? And how did I do it? And so she talked me through it and told me how to fix it, but like my finger just like hit something and I didn't even realize that I had given her kind of a bad review.
I was like,
really
yes,
enjoyed
I have been
the book.
seen. I have 1 star review.
I think all of them handled the situation at the time in the correct manner, I think. So, to every book their reader, and to every reader their book. So, that's what any good library is going to offend somebody at one point or another. People bring things up, I say, no, you don't want to read that. And I honestly say that to people. And we pass this to people constantly to encourage them to read the book. And I have, you guys met the gentleman that came in. There was a gentleman came in, he's like, oh, I like your books. And I said, no, John, you're not gonna like any of their books. And I said when he was, he goes, well, good luck, ladies, because no, I'm not gonna read them.
I have more negative comments about the book being with alcohol than I do with sex.
Really?
Yeah.
But that needed to be part of it.
That was part of the
place in a
story,
bar and a restaurant.
And the book was written in the 80s, so a lot has changed since now than the 80s. I mean, the 80s, people drank, boy, I'll tell you. They went out to dinner and they had before dinner and with dinner and after dinner drinks and nightcaps, they drank all night long.
Your DWI laws became much stricter after that.
Yeah, much
They
stricter.
started going after the serving people.
Yep,
So
they
there's
did.
a lot
Yep.
for the difference in your 2023 frame of mind.
It's amazing.
And your 1980 frame of mind.
Yeah, today the readers are, I have to hit that kind of pie-shaped reader because younger readers have no idea about that.
Yeah, no, that's true. Just as Jess said about being relevant and time sensitive. So the book she's talking about now is something that she wants out there because it's contemporarily viable now. May not in 5 to 6 years be the same impact or interest for the public. So those are good things to be aware of as a writer and a reader. Because we read things that are not of this time frame. And you have to put yourself into things. Like I tell people, there were no cell phones during this. There were no computers. Think about some of the stuff that's going on. People were, it was a different time. So, I love this question. Do you have a secret crush on any of your characters? They all have their male interests there, so.
Maybe.
I think Melissa's farmer boys were pretty hot there.
That actually is not mine. Mine would be Riker in the Shadow of the Black Moon. That's mine.
Well, I like it. Can you hide?
Oh, okay.
No. What?
Yes, a resounding yes.
Okay, so obviously there's a little more interest
I
there.
absolutely love my leading man.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be that interest and that attachment that you can make them and build them up to be the characters that they are.
Yeah.
So, okay. So are any of your characters based on or inspired by real people? Now we talked about some secrets in there with people, but do you have one that would be like, this is totally my aunt, this is like totally my neighbor, or like somebody that you just almost personify in your writing for truly somebody that you know?
Yeah, I would say a good deal of my characters are that. I have, actually the maitre d', the main character of this book, actually it wasn't a present experience at all. It was when I was a little girl. My parents belonged to a country club, Philadelphia Country Club, and there was a maitre d', well, he was an everything. He was a manager, maitre d', whatever, and his name was Tommy. And he was a kind of a heavy-set Italian guy, and Tommy took care of everything. And I had the biggest crush on this guy, and I was just a little girl. And whenever I would come, he would take me by the hand, and he'd take me into the mill room where only men could go, and buy me a Shirley Temple, and he'd ask me about school and everything. He was really a man for all seasons. He took care of everything, and that impressed me so much. And everybody would say, just go and ask Tommy. Tommy will get you a tea date, or whatever that is, a tea time, or you know, we're having a banquet, go ask Tommy. So I based him off of him, really, because of just how efficient he was, how charismatic he was, how, to me, very good looking. You know, he was just a kind of a fat, dumpy little Italian. I was only 9 at the time.
The eyes of a child.
Yeah, and so I kind of fashioned him about that, only in more of an adult form. So, but my bar people and my waitresses and everything else, as you know, they stick with you. So yeah, a lot of that's in my book.
Melissa?
I would say there's not a specific person, like you wouldn't be able to pick out a character and say, oh, this is your dad, or this is, you know, your neighbor, or whatever. But I would have characters that are based on people, and maybe a combination of people at times, taking out different qualities from different people. But if I made it, like, say, based on a neighbor, it wouldn't look anything like the neighbor, or so you wouldn't be able to guess. You know what I'm saying? So yes and no. I'd say I'm kind of both. There's not anybody specific, but I do have characteristics of them. So
I'm kind of the same. Like, there might be a couple characteristics of people I know, but I don't, like, sometimes people think, like, one of my characters is based on someone, and I'm like, well, no, because at a certain point, the imagination takes over, and they become their own person.
Yeah.
And they, like, as I'm writing, I'm like, I'm not thinking, oh, what would so-and-so do? It's, no, what would this character do? And they take on a life of their own for me.
I'm just hoping no one recognizes themselves in my.
Already told you
I'm hoping since the 80s, maybe they're just too old to even.
I got names on, so, okay. So, all right, just the last couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. And if nothing else, I hope that you all will at least come up and thank the ladies for their time at the end. They also have materials over here and books, and you can come and pick up bookmarks and talk to them about things personally also. So, how many works in progress you have going on at one time? So Jess has already said she has a book. I believe Melissa's working on writing all the time. So do you have one main book and you get it done and you move on, or do you have bits and pieces of things? Do you have a filing cabinet full of book titles that you guys are gonna then write for us? So Susan?
I have 3 in the works now.
Okay.
I'm trying to hit more of a young adult teen readers. Possibly I have a children's book in the works. I have a horse story in the books that would relate to teenagers, and things like that, another mystery.
Nice.
So it's just a matter of what I'm feeling at the time.
I have one that's just about done. I'm hoping before the end of the year that I can finish it up.
Do you have a title?
The Further I Fall,
Thank you.
and I'd say I have 8 other things in progress.
Wow, she's got all kinds of things percolating there with Susan.
Yeah.
Good. And Jess, do you have a title for your book that you're working on?
I have no titles. They have working titles. It's like a placeholder. But when I wrote that question down, I looked and I actually counted how many different files I have going on my computer that are like works in progress, and there's about 8. So there's very different stages. 2 are almost done that will release next year. Oh gosh, there's a whole bunch more that I just need time to sit down and finish.
Well, thank you for your creativity, ladies, and keep it coming, please, okay? Okay, so what project are you working on that you are super excited about?
I'm so excited about the further I fall. I just
Right,
wanna
the
get it
further
done.
you fall, you said it's almost ready,
Is it?
right?
Well, I mean, the rough draft is almost done. It would have a lot, edits and stuff, but I mean, I thought maybe I'd be done by Thanksgiving, but I'm not sure. So
Next year Thanksgiving comes again, so
What's it?
next year.
it's a mystery romance, standalone. It takes place here in Pennsylvania. It's actually about an author. So I don't know. Don't have a lot of details, I guess, that I can share, but
Right.
so
Well, thank you.
yep.
Actually, I have, I left this book with that, or my other book, Beyond the Villa, open-ended. So I'm pretty excited to take this into a trilogy, because that open-endedness there, that it takes a lot of thought. So that makes me pretty excited that I'll be working on a third book.
Nice. Jess?
I'm excited for The Last Farm. That's that one that'll release in spring. That's more of a contemporary. It's about a farmer debating if he wants to sell out to a warehouse developer. And I just
Wow.
keep
Yeah.
telling people
How
about it,
relevant
and
is
they get
that around
excited.
here?
And yeah, so I'm excited for that, just to see what people think and to see what kind of audience I can reach.
It is so awesome.
You're gonna see that
That's my mother. She got the advance copy.
That's great. That's the momager in the class.
No, wait. I started to read it and I'm like, oh, it's too close to home. I'm not sure if I can handle this.
Yeah.
And I put it aside and I picked it up again and it's like, oh, this isn't what I expected. Oh, this is really cool. Oh, this is a great way to go.
Thanks, Mom.
I'm like, that's the truth. It's the honest truth. So.
Take your mom along every time you go out.
Absolutely.
Very good at it.
That's working right there.
Okay, ladies, I appreciate that, the few questions that we put together, that they were willing to answer, and you were all respectful of each other, very much so that was a delight, that I didn't have to shush everybody, I didn't have to shush me too much. So does anybody have a question or a comment that they would like to make to any of the ladies as a whole, or directly at the moment? Sorry. Rachel?
So I know one of you works specifically with like the mystery thrillers, but in every aspect of a book, you want to kind of build a sense of suspense. You want to draw your readers in. What are some successes and drawbacks you found with each of your individual styles? Like, just in
Good
general,
question.
how do you, what is, I guess in other words, how do you find you best engage your audience?
I would say, since I'm mystery romance, I mean, just laying the breadcrumbs, the trail for them to follow. And, because I love it, like, when I know somebody's reading it, and they're like, oh, I think it's so-and-so. And you're like, maybe. and if they're totally wrong, I love that even more. Just because then I thought, well, I maybe made it too obvious, or, just to give it the right amount of suspense to get you to think it's this person, but yet maybe it's this one, or just to lead them on that trail. So for me, that's the thing, to leave the trail of breadcrumbs. So
The trail of breadcrumbs is a great descriptor, and I mean, just slightly different. I knew when I published, well, I hoped when I published Knightess that it would be a trilogy. So I had to build in breadcrumbs 2 books back already that now are culminating in the 3rd book, which is probably why I'm struggling with the 3rd book. I mean, it's gonna be great, don't worry, but there's a lot that I'm building off of, and because readers have said, oh, I need to know what, so I think that's a success, is that readers have been saying, oh, I want to know what happens next, I need the 3rd book, I need it. That's a big compliment. So I know I've done my job, but now I have to finish my job and make it as good as they think it's going to be. So there's a lead in there.
Have you picked a name for the baby yet?
I did. I think I think.
There's a little teaser on the side. I also found it interesting that, Melissa spoke about how she had a standalone. Okay, so if anybody doesn't know that analogy, a standalone book is that you could just pick it up and read it and you would have all of your answers encompassed into one book. Whereas Jess has talked about having a trilogy and she had to build suspense and questions unanswered in her first set. And as you move along with the story, hopefully she will fulfill your answers of what you need. And Susan has spoken about how she got done, then she wrote a second one, and the second one has been left with unanswered questions and opportunities for her to go back and fill in pieces if she gets to that project and whatever in the future. You could pick up that next book and remember what had gone in the other one. So very different styles and very different techniques. It was a good question, Rachel.
And I think, Rachel, just to add on that, there's a lot of conversation in my book also. So in the interaction of your characters, you're building questions, you know, do you really think that could happen? I don't think that would happen. You know, and then at the end of every chapter, to build suspense, I find like an exclamation point. There's that one sentence that said, you know, in the still of the night, that one sentence that's going to make you want to go on to that next chapter to see, who really did do that? Gee, I never thought of that, what's happening here? So, yeah, you build suspense, I think, at the end of all of your chapters to, you know, like raking a pile of leaves, you know, you just keep raking them up.
You gotta get that last sentence of the chapter just right.
Yeah, exactly.
Thankfully, that's something I don't even think about. I just write it and I'm like, okay, take a breath, next chapter.
Yeah, it is.
And that's
It's like
just how
that,
it flows.
it's like that period, you know? Yeah, it's good.
This gentleman.
Oh, how does Amazon pay royalties? And if you have a book in a bookstore, then how do you get paid from their sales?
So what is the percentage on Amazon?
Well, you can
70, we get 70.
Yeah.
70%.
So you get 70% of your sale back, minus the print cost. So if you're selling paperbacks, you subtract your print costs, and then you get 70% of whatever profit. The other 30% goes to Amazon. They just direct deposit you a check. I think it's 60 days after your sale. So just something to keep in mind. There's a little bit of a lag time there. Bookstores usually work on a 60-40 commission rate. So 60% goes to the author, 40% to the bookstore. Now keep in mind, in that 60% that's going to the author, that includes your print cost. So, I don't know, I can't speak for you ladies, but I try to make at least a couple dollars per sale, and that's, when I'm selling direct, I can make more, but selling in bookstores and stuff, I'm usually happy if I can make just a couple dollars.
And some bookstores will take it on consignment too, so that makes a difference too. You know, you don't have to guarantee so many sales or whatever, they'll just take it, and then if it's not selling, they'll give it back, or, so it depends on the bookstore.
So price it where you can at least make a couple bucks.
So is that up to you, whether you charge, you know, $16 or $20?
I base my prices off of my print cost.
Yeah.
So your print cost for your paperback determines things, and you want to try to also be competitive with other books in your genre.
Right. The main thing is to do your research, and whatever genre you're in is just look and see what your books are selling for paperback. Look at how long your book is compared to somebody else's. Like if you have a 200 page book, you don't want to charge the same as what somebody is with 350. You know what I mean? Even if it's the same genre. So you just need to try to, you know, and it costs a lot less to sell the 200, to make the 200 as opposed to the 350. But you know, that's what I would do. Just do the research and see what's selling and what price range in your genre.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
something too, you might want to, can you hold up just 2 of those books, like mine and somebody else's?
I don't wanna have any favoritism, I hold
Yeah.
it all.
But like, you'll see, mine is like kind of, it's
Different
smaller, but
size.
it's fatter, and that was just like what I wanted as my format.
And
But to make that costs a
Susan's and
little
Melissa's
bit
are the
more
same.
for me to print, because it's more pages. Like if I had gone with a bigger size and less pages, that affects your pricing as well. But it determines what you want it to look to be and your aesthetics to be as well. So you have to flip like, what do you think your reader's willing to spend on it, you know?
So what company did you go with for the self-publishing, right across the board?
Go ahead. Okay, so I direct publish through Amazon and Ingram Spark.
Oh.
So with direct publishing through Amazon, I have a platform, I'm in control, I did everything. I did not use like a third party formatter, any company. Like I know there's companies out there that help you get your book out there. I didn't use that. So my book is also, because I published it through Ingram Spark, it is available through Barnes & Noble then, it is available on bookshop.org, which means it is available to bookstores and libraries globally. So using those two platforms, they're more, well, Ingram Spark is more of a distributor, but they service all those other bookstores.
So Amazon would have their editors and their.
No,
No, they don't.
we as self-publishers, we fund our editors, we fund our cover designers, we do our own formatting, or you have to pay for formatting. What else is there? Marketing,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of overhead that's doing it.
Talk to them about how you've made your posters, your bookmarks, things that
Oh, yeah.
will be over there at the tables with you. Those are all costs and things
Yeah.
that they've done.
All of our marketing and promotions and postcards and running ads.
I had a mentor that I picked up online. Actually, he wrote a newsletter that was so incredibly informative about the publishing business. His name is Rob Bacon, and he wrote a newsletter called The Perfect Right. So it was just on a whim. I wrote to him and said, you know, I'm a young author, and would you take a look at my book? And he said, yes, I am an editor. So I went with him, and it was the best move I ever made. And he put me in touch with a business called BookBiz, and they published my book. They set it up for me, all the pages, everything like that. I had a cover author, or a cover artist that came from his books, that did his covers, and she was wildly successful. She was wonderful. And he also steered me in the way that would save me less money. So he's like, look, you can go with this, it will cost you $1,000, but this girl only charges $250. You know, so he really was instrumental in getting me together. And then BookBiz put the book together, put it all together, and they placed it on Amazon for me. So, yeah, so it was expensive, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. That's my story.
So you
anyway.
didn't
I
use
don't
more
think
of
I
a
could've-
third party, like
Yeah,
intermediary
third
to
party,
get it out there, but you still had to fund that. And
Yes.
You still have a pretty high degree of control though, like they don't own the rights to the
Oh
book.
no, I had all control over it. And BookBiz, I mean, they just offer you so many different things, you know, do you want a little martini glass over each chapter, you know? I mean, little things, you know, do you want your numbers in the right-hand corner, on the left-hand corner, you know, you want your martini glass, you want a little duck here, you know, they just do everything, what kind of paper you want, what kind of, you know, and they just slap it together and mail it to you, and it was very successful, and I think it cost me like about $500 a book. You know, so it was like nothing. And then if I didn't like it, I would just call her on the phone and she'd say, okay, send it back, let's put something else together. So that was really a boon for me, because I'd be lost if I went to Amazon. And to just give them to Amazon, I don't know, did you just give your book to Amazon?
No, we
You know, and have them
we
do
just
it?
I just
don't know.
uploaded the files.
Right.
Yeah.
But Amazon also has like, so Amazon does on demand. So there's not a storage unit of your book somewhere on Amazon. When you buy my book off of Amazon, they make it right then and there and send it out to you. So there's no back stock or anything like that. So that's a difference too. But you can't, I would guess that, like the books that we have here today, I bought off of Amazon, they're author copies. And so then we get them at a discounted rate, so then we can sell them at what same price or whatever price you want to that Amazon would sell them for. So,
So I actually did something even different than that. I used a different printer, which I just gave them my files and paid them just to print my books, and I got a better rate, and I think it's a better quality than what I was getting from Amazon in regards to like my covers and stuff. Because I had some issues last year with some of the books that came from Amazon had, I don't know, like they had this line down the middle, like halfway through the book, and it was just a misprint, but I don't know, it wasn't, I mean, I would still order author copies from Amazon, but it was easier to use this local printer. It's Maple Press, but if you have your file, they're very, very good to work with.
Yeah, I have a correction. I said publisher, but really what I meant was printer. It's the same thing book is.
Okay.
They put your book together for you, not a publisher.
I remember that during the book club, people had made a comment that they liked the print that was used in the
Yes.
book.
Yes, I did all my own formatting, so thank you.
Yes, for any authors or upcoming authors, you would be surprised how many book club people, ladies and gentlemen, are aware of what the book looks like.
Yeah.
The printing.
True.
I actually wrote a paper and when I was in school, and you're talking about the font, the spacing around it, whether your book is numbered on the top or on the bottom, all of it, every reader is different, but I was shocked to hear how many people commented, and it seemed to be the same book. If there was a problem that they didn't like how it looked, they were more than happy to tell an author that it wasn't, not in a bad way, we're very respectful, but just to say that it wasn't easy to read. It was bad print, it was a bad font. So that the next time that they go forward, I think they talked to you about one of the, something with
Page numbers are
page
really small. I
numbers,
still
yeah.
have to figure out how
Yeah,
to
so
tweak
that,
that.
I mean, like, we are very respectful, but this is 30 people in a room that's giving feedback to these ladies, good and bad, nothing disrespectful, but it would shock me as a reader and an English major and librarian that there were other people that also, because occasionally I would say something about the genre or how they formatted things or the writing style or whatever. Other people would probably be like, oh, but then other people have picked up on that. So that really is very important to think about for future reference.
And just as an aside, if you are seriously thinking about writing or anything, pick this book up. It's called How to Write What People Will Pay to Read, and it's by Robert Bacon. And it's just chock full of everything that we've talked about here and the how-to of it all. So, and he is still in the business of editing, in case anybody wanted to know. He's excellent, that's all I'll say. And this is a fabulous book, so,
Thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
it's an excellent, excellent book. Easy to read and put together, so.
Does anybody else have any questions? Nancy?
How much do you think about your readers when you're writing a book? I mean, I know Melissa talked about, having her 12-year-old and 98-year-old read it, but how much do you think about who's going to be reading this book?
That's a great question.
It is a great question.
I want everybody who wants to go first.
I want everybody to
I want
read it.
everybody, but
Well, in my case, I really have a very small audience for
I'll be in touch.
reading my book because it's dated. You know, it is back in the 1980s. People still smoked cigarettes in the bar. A bartender was there, always to light your smoke. You know, I have a small audience, but in writing, and maybe I should have thought more about that and broadened my audience a little bit more, but I didn't because I was writing what I knew, and I was writing a mystery that I thought would appeal to everyone, even though it was not of the time. But yeah, in retrospect, I wish I had given thought to a broader audience. You have to think about your audience and who you're actually selling your book to,
But if
your
the person-
ideas to.
If the person who's reading it lived in the 80s thinking, oh my God, I remember that.
Yeah, and people
So-
that do read this book
Yeah.
usually love it because it's chock full of that dated stuff, where people, Adrian's wore tuxedos and, fine dining was really fine dining.
Yeah.
And, so it's interesting. And it's interesting too because I was talking to someone that was an author for young adults, and I was talking about horse stories because I grew up with horse stories. I'm a horse woman. And she shook her head sadly and she said, I don't know, the market's out there, but right now, younger people are into electronic things. They're into a completely different thing that my mind could even reach. So,
If you can get them to even read, period.
yeah, to get them to even read. So it's important. That's why we say it's a great question because your audience is everything. Now, a book like yours, Jess, I loved it because everybody is curious about that era. But really,
I've had to
it's
talk some
focused.
people into it because of the era it's written in.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like once you start it, you'll love it. But it's getting people interested
Yeah.
in doing that, and fine dining. Hey, you're living on fast food, what do you know about fine dining? Well, just go in and just read a few chapters and see if you like it, and then catch on from there. So it's a huge question, really, because it's important.
I think one of the key things there is keeping a reader's interest. I think that, as you had said previously, that if you get somebody to open your book and start to read it, they're gonna wanna know, continue it on.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm speaking as my many years' experience in all formats of trying to get people to read, from little kids to older people to the library here. Sometimes you can't judge a book by its cover, you need to just open it up and read it, and you'd be shocked how many times we've done different things for the book club, and people will be like, I never even knew I liked a Western. Like, I make people read the most, there is no right or wrong in my opinion. And as I said earlier, you do not have to like the book, but if you do not read it, you do not have the ability to tell me you didn't like it. You can read the book and tell me you hate it, and I'm fine with that, but you still read that book?
I would like to go back to your question, because I have a little bit of a different answer. When I wrote Knightess, I didn't write it with the intent to publish it. I mean, I guess I had in the back of my mind, oh, this would be cool if one day I could publish this. But I wrote it for me, just because I enjoyed writing it, and I was just having a blast. I couldn't find on the shelves what I wanted to read, and that is how I wrote this. Because I wanted to read what I wanted to read, so I wrote it. But now that I have had readers read it, I'm much more aware. I'm aware of the more sexual content. I'm like, okay, how far do I take this? How far do I back this off? And because I'm more clear in my later two books that I'm more in the historical fiction category instead of trying to push them into the romance category, I'm trying to be even more accurate on my historical research. Not that I wasn't accurate in Knightess, but it's probably a little bit more of a creative license at some parts than in the latter two books. So that's how I'm being more aware of my audience.
And I would say, as far as the first draft, when I'm writing the first draft, I don't think about the reader. I'm just trying to get the story down. So then when I go back through for the second draft, that's when I think, oh, is this gonna be interesting? How am I gonna keep their interest? Are they gonna be offended by this word? That kind of thing. But the first time around, I don't, because I can't worry about it or I won't get the story out. So
That's a really good point. Yeah, you can't stress about the reader too much, or you're not making it unique, and it's not your creation,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there has to be an awareness, or we go all over the place.
Any other questions?
When the ladies, all three of you, were at our book clubs, and at book club we tell it like we feel, like some people will love the book, some people will not love the book, some people will, like, sometimes everybody will love the book, it's just different. But when Jess was supposed to come to the book club, or we knew the author was coming, and that night, everybody's like, well, because Jess was a member of our book club.
Oh,
But
when
we
I was
didn't-
incognito.
We didn't know that Jess was actually the author. We just
Wow.
knew the author was J.A. Stein, and everybody's like, isn't the author here? And I said, I don't know, maybe something happened, you know. And she was clear at the end, and someone said, well, I thought the author was going to be here tonight, and Claudia's like, she is. And everybody's
And
like
she,
looking
and
at
she
me.
criticized because she didn't like the title.
Yeah,
she received, every author received criticism,
but
so.
Jess didn't want to
Good enough.
influence us that because she was part of our book club that we would all say just nice things about her. So she
I
was
wanted
like,
it raw.
I wanted the
Incognito.
truth.
We do a round robin, so we sit in a circle and everybody makes a comment, even if it's just, I didn't get to finish it, I'm sorry, I'm enjoying it, just, move on, whatever. And, Jess had come into the book club, the month before, so she just happened to be the last seat. And Melissa, I didn't have enough Tootsie Rolls for us, she had a fabulous, little trivia contest for us, and we all got the Tootsie Roll question. She was like, oh my God, I don't know if I could have enough Tootsie Rolls. So, yes, and Susan came and shared stories with us, and, shared her other books, which I know Minnie and Puck is her love child, but it was just too short for a book club book. So I told her, make sure you let everybody know about that. But as I said, all of these ladies' books are here on the shelves also, and they have them here. So, everybody's invited to come to book club. Book club is a free event here at the library. The library is free for you to use. It's very, very rare in the world that you get to say that something is free for you to come use. So, I know that I have enjoyed meeting each and every one of the ladies, enjoyed all of their books, but I think that what a collaboration that all three of them have now come and worked together more than once to get to know each other. They did not know each other. They've reached out to each other and are being supportive of each other. So I think that that's great. And Rhonda, you have to admit, book clubs are fun. They're fun and they're great, and it's nice that we can highlight local authors.
It's been a few times I haven't finished the book for life got in the way or whatever, but it's like, I still wanted to come because I wanted to hear what everybody had to say about the book, and
It's kind of addicting.
it's camaraderie, it's just
It's
so
the last
nice.
Monday of the month at 6 o'clock, unless for a holiday or we change it for some freaky reason. So, yeah, and I'll tell you, that you.
I want to ask you a question.
Hey, John. This is the man that didn't want to read their novel, so I'm not having
Question for us.
Hey, John.
This is a question for all three of you. You're writing a book on a particular subject that you're interested in, all right? All three. Whether I like it or not, that's another story. But generally speaking, all books are this thick. So how do you form in your mind how you're going to wind up with a book this thick? That's, I'm curious to know that.
Cut.
I mean, I
Add
could see
in.
an author
Add
who's
in.
published
Started
blah, blah,
out one, John, you would have had all your questions answered.
blah. I'm sorry.
They did address that. They did talk about keeping it to writing, and then cutting it down and condensing and making their storylines stream. But the first process for them was just writing, and getting it down.
Oh.
And Melissa talked about making, when do you decide you want your book 200 pages is going to be cheaper to publish in print than a book that's 350 pages.
Mm.
And there's plenty of people.
And I think we start with a goal and a word count. You have different size books. The Last Farm is going to be a different size. Standard novel length is between 50 and over 50,000 words, usually more than 60,000 words. Mine pushes 100. I think Knightess is like 102,000 words. but I mean, that's kind of on the long side. A lot of traditional publishers don't want it to be that long. So if you end up with that much, you have a lot of trimming to do. So I mean, your sweet spot is somewhere between 60 to 80,000 words usually. So you kind of go with that in mind, and then you let the story unfurl as it does, and then
See, I'm
Edit.
different. I wouldn't have, I never think of a word count or pages. I just write. And
Or
as I
is
said
the
before,
page-
I don't put up a vision board, I don't put up my characters, I don't even have a plot. I just take one step in front of the other, and I just go with it. And it really, my books just write themselves, because it's just conversation, it's one thing happening, this event came up, and then that event brought light to this, and then this brings light to that, and it's just one step about the other. But then again, I finished with a book like that thick, so it was like I have to finish this somewhere, and the ending is a hard thing. I think the endings are really hard to nail,
I give
because
Melissa a ton of
you
credit for
can
writing
just keep the story
standalones.
going. It is like you
That's
say
hard.
a soap opera.
I think standalones are harder than trilogies because I can leave open-ended questions in my trilogy, which I then have to answer later.
And that's what I
but
do.
the Last Farm is going to be a standalone, and I think that was hard because you had to tie everything up all in one. Like my sister actually read an early draft and she yelled at me. She's like, "This isn't going to be a trilogy. You finish this. Like you have to answer this question, this question, this question, this question." And I went back and I did.
Yeah.
But it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
It is.
It's an important skill set.
Well, and I have to agree, like the first couple times I wrote, I didn't concentrate on the word count. And so you can hide, she's like, oh, you have way too much, so you have to cut. Because it was like 115 or something.
Oh wow.
And a mystery romance is about 90.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Mine was huge too.
Yeah. So now, like right now, the one I'm writing is at 76,000. And so now I know I have to wrap it up in 20,000 words, you know, so, I mean, I won't necessarily make it necessarily 90, but you know what I mean? And you just have to try to wrap it up because you know you're getting close to the end and you're either gonna, if you take too long, you lose the reader, you know, or you do need to make a second book out of it.
Right.
So,
We've talked about a lot about the different difficulties of the writing process, how difficult it is to get published, to take criticism from editors and book clubs. What keeps you going? What keeps you motivated to do the next bit or do the bit that you don't like?
I just feel like it burst out of me. It's seriously, I've described it to people, it's like this, almost like this itch, and it's like I just have to get it out of my head, like this story just feels like it's gonna explode. So I end up just sitting down and it comes out, and whether or not it ever gets published is another category, but I just have that passion for writing, I always have, so.
It's a passion, and that's a good word for it. It's a passion.
If someone
It's
enjoys
just
it, all the
something-
better.
I can't sit in silence, well, I can't sit still in silence anyway, but when I do, I'm always thinking of a story. My imagination is always going, it's always something. So, yeah, it's just a passion.
I would agree with that, and I would say it's like a love-hate relationship. Like you hated it sometimes, but the love wins out. Like there's nothing better than holding that book that you just sat for months and read, and then your name is across the top, and
That's the
you know
thrill.
that is the thrill, and that's what keeps you going. Plus, you have the stories in your head, and you want to share. Like I had a grandmother when I was young, and she just would just tell me stories about a rabbit. You know, I don't care. I just wanted to hear it, and so it's kind of, I don't know. It doesn't matter that there's 100,000 books out there. You still want to, you know.
And just
keep
when you
sharing.
want to drop into obscurity, there's always somebody that says, oh my gosh, when's your next book coming out? You're like, what? When's it coming out? You're still reading it. Yes.
Or you meet
And you
somebody
go back
that's
and do-
read it and they're like, oh, I loved it, and
Yeah.
that just is like the best
Just keeps you
feeling
going.
ever.
Yeah.
That makes it all worth it.
It
Art
does.
is subjective, you're gonna have people that like it, appreciate it, and love it, and there's gonna be people that are gonna be like, that wasn't really my thing.
Yep. You
And
can't
also-
please everybody.
Right, and also them all changing genres, they're all mixing it up a little bit. So if one thing doesn't work for one group or whatever, they still have a different story they wanna tell. You know, that's another thing, there's authors that, I tell them all the time, there's authors that I love one story, and I don't like the next one that they wrote, but that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna pick up the next one that they write and look at it. Might be another one that I like, you know, it's the truth. Does anybody else have any questions? Hey, you're more than welcome to go over and touch an author.
Thank you. We each have a copy here, if anybody.
I think we'll have to do those yet.
So please make sure you fill out your name and phone number to get a free book, okay? So it's a free drawing.
Email, not phone
Okay.
number.